I want to welcome everybody to today's installment of Community Quarantine. Today's guest is Chief of Police at Seal Beach, Phil Gonshak. Chief, thank you for taking the time out to get together today. It's been a long time coming.
It's always a pleasure to see you, Sean, and to be with you and walk through some of these challenges that we've had experienced, not just as residents, but as members of the public safety community, and all the good work that you do, and Game Changer, and all the other fun jazz. So I don't know if I'm talking that jazz for you today at all, but definitely got to give you a plug for all the good work you're doing.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So let's just jump into it, man. You're the chief at Seal Beach, but you were Phil a long time before that happened. I know that you're originally from Arizona. So let's jump back in time and tell me about growing up in Arizona and in the Gonshak household.
Yeah, so it's been a long, different, challenging road, to say the least, and how I ended up in California. But recollecting my childhood memories, they come from literally South Phoenix, skipping rocks in the dirt and running down the tunnels of all the water pipelines in South Phoenix. Long story short, my dad was a police officer for a couple of years before he had some family issues that he had to dip out on being a police officer for and go take over a family business. And then my mom suddenly passed away from a heart condition and some blood clotting issues at the age of 27. So I was pretty much left without a mom at 7 years old. And then had an older brother at the time, and he and I were kind of displaced for a while there with another woman and her son, and grew up basically trying to figure out life and get through some of my own personal challenges and being raised in Phoenix. And then fast forward several years, went away to college. That didn't work out. I drank a little too much and had a little too much fun, and got a friend of mine at the time pregnant, and ended up having a baby girl at the age of 21, 22 years old. And, it was time to grow up and become a police officer or figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And so the opportunity presented itself to be a police officer in Phoenix area. And so I applied with Phoenix, Tempe, Glendale. I think those are the three top agencies, and Tempe hired me rather quickly. I'd like to say it's because of my qualities, but I'm pretty sure it's had something to do with my fact that my dad used to work there, but eventually worked there till 2006, 2007, and then lateraled over here to the city of Seal Beach Police Department, where my wife's family pretty much came over here many years ago before that from Boston area. And Seal Beach picked me up right away when we were trying to get close to her family, and been here ever since. So it's been a wild ride. I know it's kind of a fast intro in 5 minutes, but yeah, been fun.
No, I want to take our time with the things that happened with you up until becoming the head guy at Seal Beach, because we are a product of our experiences, and I'm not saying that our past is us, but our past helps comprise who we are today. You said you were in school for a little bit and partied too hard. I can relate to that. I was on academic probation after my first semester in college. So I guess that might have something to do with why we get along.
I think, yeah.
I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. What happened? What were some of the things that led you to want to go to college? Why'd you want to go to college? And what was it like for you when it seemed like that dream was going to be put on hold, to say the very least?
It's a really, really good question. Why did I want to go to college? So it kind of goes back to, I want to say probably like 8th grade, freshman year of high school. There was a team on TV, the University of Notre Dame, and they were playing football, and I would see in the back, I'd see all these student sections, all the kids having fun and going to the football games and having a riot and a blast at the football games. And so I thought, wow, it'd be really cool to go to Notre Dame someday. And to kind of like give you a little taste of what happened my junior year, a buddy of mine, his name was Mike Liebman, was recruited and went to the University of Notre Dame on a wrestling scholarship. And so I was a wrestler at the time. I was terrible, but you know, I had thoughts and dreams of grandeur. And so he said, "Hey, it's beautiful up here." His little brother Mark was in my grade as well. You guys should come up here and check out the University of Notre Dame. So we went up there our junior year of high school. This was 93, 92, 93, 1992, 1993. And just to go see a college campus in and of itself, my dad was all for it, and my stepmom at the time was totally down, and I think they helped pay our way up there to go up there and visit Mike Liebman and the wrestling program. And man, we fell in love. We hung out with all of his friends at this. It's called Soren Hall, kind of like on the west side of Notre Dame campus, and we hung out with him and may or may not have done some illegal drinking with him, and had some fun up there at the University of Notre Dame. We thought to ourselves, wow, this would be, you know, amazing to come here and wrestle or whatever we end up doing in life at the University of Notre Dame. And so I had fallen in love with it then, but I wasn't a very good student. I mean, I had, you know, some good grades. I had some bad grades, and I did terrible on my SATs, but I said, you know what, whatever I got to do. He says, well, you know, hey, there's another buddy of mine who started at this college right across the street called Holy Cross College. You should go talk to the dean over there and see if they'd be interested in some kid from Phoenix who also happens to be Jewish. And I said, well, I'm Jewish, man. I don't know, you know, what it's like for a Jewish kid to be in a Catholic school. And he goes, no, the Catholics love the Jews. Give it a whip. And I'm like, all right, well, let's go do it. So I literally walked across the street, and I forget the name of the dean or who it was that I talked to there, but they were like, yes, let's walk you around. And by that time, the night before, we had already, you know, hung out on campus at Notre Dame. The football game was then going to be the next day on a Saturday. And so I toured Holy Cross, and I'm like, I'm in. And so I came home. Well, no, we had gone back to campus on Friday night. I saw Lou Holtz speak at one of the basketball games as like a precursor to help motivate the team onto the Saturday morning game. And our buddy got us tickets into the Saturday morning game at the University of Notre Dame. This was, I don't know if you've ever been there. Have you been to Notre Dame, Sean?
I've been there once when
Okay.
I was coaching. Yeah.
Have you been on campus at the football field or on the field?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I got chills even now thinking about these memories. But you know, you walk into the University of Notre Dame stadium, and back in the 90s, it was all wood flat benches. So every stadium seat was made of wood. And you know, here's this, you know, rotten little kid from South Phoenix sitting on University of Notre Dame football field, and literally like a couple hours before, we had snuck onto the grass and kicked field goals where the janitors were just working on the field. And so it was like, you know, I'm experiencing all this. I'm like, I got to go to school here. So we go to the game. It's a blast. We fly home. I started doing my app for Holy Cross College, and it was just the experience, man. I don't think that there was ever like a moment in my life where I was like, I'm going to go to college, but that experience from the University of Notre Dame was profound. And then it just so happens that the movie Rudy comes out. You know, I'd never even heard of Rudy or any of this other kind of jazz. So my senior year, I get accepted to go to Holy Cross. I think it was like the summer of 94 that the movie Rudy came out. And so then I became that kid that wanted to be Rudy. And so, you know, story got written for about a year. I got to Holy Cross College, was admitted, got straight A's, was doing a really, really good job there. But man, it was so cold. And it was literally like -3, -4 every single day during the winter. The snow was piled up. It was super expensive. We couldn't find housing on campus, so I had to rent an apartment, and it was literally bankrupting my dad. So he asked me if I'd come home and he'd buy me a cheap car, brand new one, if I made the deal with him. And so I took it. It was probably the biggest mistake I ever made as it relates to my education. And then I transferred to the University of Arizona, joined a fraternity, drank too much, and then got a girl pregnant. And then that's where the life of my career got going, kind of by accident and by necessity more than desire of becoming a police officer. And then obviously now that I'm in it and have been doing it strong now for 21 years, I look back and I'm so thankful for my daughter and what she brought to my life and the road that it put me on to become where I am today. So that's kind of the beginning precursor of all that jazz, Sean, if that helps you out.
So before that time, just to recap, you lost your mom at a young age. Um, Finances kept you from staying in school. And listen, that's a story that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
I know people that had to drop out because they couldn't afford going to college. And I'm glad you kind of touched on the difference in the climate, because you're a kid from South Phoenix, eager to get out of there and go to the middle of the country, South Bend. I don't know what you were thinking.
Right.
I know you had a good experience, but then the reality hits you in the face when November and December roll around, and God forbid January and February. So I know that was a culture shock for you, but just interesting that your path to this point includes tragedy and the quote unquote misfortune of getting your friend pregnant. I say quote unquote because you have a beautiful child from that union, but you got into law enforcement to step up and support your unexpected family, correct?
Yeah, I think it's funny you say step into law enforcement and take care of my family. I think once I don't know how you're going to air this or how it's going to unfold, or if you're going to, but I think it's important. We talked about this the last time you and I went out to lunch, is that resilience factor, Sean. I think that's why you and I talk about a lot of things we have in common in what it is that drives people to make decisions, right? And I think that when I look back at my childhood, there were several decisions made for me, but more importantly, there were several decisions made by me. And I don't want to take credit for my upbringing or who I became, but I do want to take credit for the decisions that I had to make physically, including that of being 7 or 8 years old and not having a mom or that mother figure in my life to make those decisions into who I became today. And so it's just so, I look at these every time I have a conversation with you, man, I get all deep and start thinking about my life and those decisions that have made me who I am today. I apologize for that. So yeah, I think that those decisions are what impacts us, but more importantly, the resiliency factor, man. We gotta teach our children how to be more resilient, and that doesn't necessarily mean be more independent. It just means putting on the shoelaces again a little bit tighter tomorrow, and dealing with what we have to deal with yesterday, no matter what your age is, how difficult it is, and how you rise from those decisions yesterday and how they impact your future tomorrow is so important, man. So anyway, I didn't mean to go off on a soapbox there.
No problem. That's what we're here for. But to be clear, you never had any aspirations to become a police officer, did you?
Oh, no. It was quite the opposite. There were several career ideas I had, my goodness, that were in my head. I mean, all my life I had everything from I wanted to be, a professional athlete to a doctor. Being a doctor was huge in my latter years of high school, where I started to buckle down and be like, okay, I can't screw off anymore. I got to be somebody someday. And so I really wanted to be a doctor. And then, school hit me in the face when I went to the University of Arizona, like a brick Mack truck, man. It was just like, wow, this is a lot of school and it's a lot. And here I am, going down this tailspin of life. I was involved in a relationship, and it was back in Phoenix, and here I am in Tucson driving back and forth. And, there was always this need to have kind of this female in my life, or a female in my life, for lack of a better story. So I always wanted to have, I was a serial monogamous. I wanted to have a monogamous relationship all the time. And that made a lot of decisions that I think, God, if I would have just kept my head strong and stayed in school, maybe I wouldn't be a police chief. I'd be a doctor someday. But it all worked out. And like you said, I think the last time we had breakfast or lunch, it's like, I don't know how it happens, or if there is, the good Lord has a decision or a path for us to move forward, or if it's just circumstances, or we develop our own decisions that make us who we are today. But we have to be thankful for what we have. And that's where I am today. I'm very thankful. I don't know how I got here or what happened to get me be this fortunate in life, but I'm extremely thankful, man. So,
well, you drop out of school, you become a father, you become a police officer in Arizona. Now, I don't have to tell you that Arizona, from a law enforcement standpoint, depending on what your view is of how law enforcement should conduct its business, but Sheriff Joe Arpaio put Arizona on the map, and in a lot of corners of the country, not in a positive way, but in some corners of the country, I might as well say a lot of corners of the country, he put it on the map in a positive way. What was being in law enforcement in that state that I consider to be pretty conservative politically? I believe Arizona was the last state in the country to approve the Martin Luther King federal holiday. What was it like being in law enforcement in that particular state as opposed to California? They seem like they're diametrically opposed to one another.
Yeah, you're going from a completely red state for the most part. Back in the early 2000s, I had voted for a conservative president at the time, and I'll tell you, my upbringing was to be conservative, and then to come to California, it's almost like it's a complete, like you said, shifting into a completely different gear, and trying to live or learn that style of life in this profession. The profession, relatively speaking, thankfully, is very apolitical. I'll tell you that we here, especially in our profession, are constantly trying to challenge ourselves in the frame of reference as it relates to politics, but more importantly, just life in general. In Arizona, it's easy to be a conservative. In California, it's easy to be liberal. What's difficult now, Sean, and you guys talk about this ad nauseum sometimes, is how, as a police officer, do you not get thrown into the mix of politics and fall prey to it, right? You've got a right side of the political spectrum who's toting your flag, literally, the thin blue line or Blue Lives Matter or you name it. But then you've got the liberal side who respects your position and your authority and genuinely like the police department, but are calling for some reforms that are challenging. And so I think what's made it more challenging specifically now in 2021 rather than 2000 is literally just the title of my badge. Being a police officer, you can be a conservative or a liberal and go out and sing it till you're blue in the face. But the second you put on this badge or this patch, all that's got to stop. And it's important for members of the community to know that, because I can't give you my political opinion wearing this uniform because of the fact that I have to treat everybody equally. And that can be challenging to even understand for most people. It's like, well, we're the one carrying your flag for you. Yeah, you're the one carrying our flag for us, but you're also the one, that was on the footsteps of the United States Capitol trying to take down police officers. So where is the contradiction in some of that stuff? And then even further, I'll give you another moment in time of clarity for CNN. I think I told you the story about Don Lemon, who's telling me as I'm watching CNN that night of the insurrection, that if those were Black people on the steps, those cops would be killing them. And that to me is like, what are you talking about? I don't care if you're Black or white or Asian or Jewish or whatever you are. I would never kill you for storming the Capitol. And so that in and of itself has been an extreme challenge, man, is balancing political beliefs, because cops are supposed to be one or the other, and that's not that easy, man. It's just not.
Well, you're in a unique position because you are chief, and you can take us through what that process was like for you. But in major cities, typically the mayor appoints the chief, right?
Yeah.
Whatever political stance the mayor has, it seems like it's going to be natural for that mayor to appoint a chief of police that is in line with his or her political views, right? So there is politics involved in the selection of a police chief. What was that process like for you in Seal Beach? Because from the outside looking in, I look at the demographics of Seal Beach, just generally speaking, and it's in Orange County. Orange County hasn't gone blue until recent. Orange County has a reputation of its own. What was that process like for you getting appointed in this small Orange County town? And you're saying that law enforcement is not supposed to be political, but everybody brings what they bring to the table as an individual when they put that uniform on. And depending on how strong your beliefs are, I don't see how your personal beliefs don't spill into your job at times.
Well, let's work through that, right? And it's a really good segue into what I think what we're eventually going to talk about, which is trying to build diversity into law enforcement and make it part of our culture, which it always should have been, right? And so I think what the benefit for me is, and you're talking about cities or counties where sheriffs are elected. Yeah. And so in Orange County, Sheriff Don Barnes is elected. Me as a police chief, I'm either tested or appointed by the city manager. And so I'll tell you, I got to give my city manager, Jill Ingram, a shout out. She's the one that promoted me from the operations commander to the chief of police of this organization. And then my predecessor, Chief Joe Miller, also had the confidence in me to give me the nod to obviously promote me in his mouth to her ears and our city council, who does a very good job of running an efficient city. And in the city itself, and city of Seal Beach specifically, is relatively both sides. We don't have a predominantly conservative community. We have pretty much all over the spectrum from left to right. I don't think that extremes really are really here in the city of Seal Beach, but you also have to remember we have almost 9,000 of our seniors in a little community called Leisure World over here. So politically speaking, Sean, to be honest with you, I've done a very good job of trying to stay out of it, and more importantly, focus on what's important to the community, which is seriously just trying to drive down crime and improve everybody's quality of life, regardless of the political nature. And let me give you an example of it. So during the pandemic, probably 2 days before this was even an ordeal, the city of Seal Beach said, you know what, we're to the point where it's coming up into March, April season. This was 2020. And we look out at the beach and now everybody's been ordered to stay at home, don't go to work. And everybody was literally crashing the beach. So students, children, parents, seniors, you name it, were crashing our beach. We said, we need to shut down our beach until we could figure this out. You would have thought, man, I had done all the world's work of, making everybody go home and not have fun. And I caught all sides of spectrums of political beliefs because for some reason this pandemic became political, including the decisions that a law enforcement official had to make. And our goal is to protect the public. And so it was a challenge for us because we're not looking at the politics. We're looking at it, okay, what is best for the community? And from my experience and training and what I'm learning, whether it was from the CDC or whether I think it was Johns Hopkins University that was providing us literal information and calculated decisions. And then 2 days later, Governor Newsom, shuts down all beaches in Southern California. And so then it was like, oh, well, now you're a liberal. And I'm like, no, I'm not a liberal or a conservative. It doesn't matter what I am. I'm a police chief and my job is to protect the community. But man, it was very challenging, and it still is challenging to make sure that we try to leave our political beliefs behind us and be more of an opportunist to make sure that everybody has the ability to speak their mind, speak it freely, and protect those no matter what side of the spectrum you're on. So that's a long-winded answer, but I'll tell you, it's much easier being a police chief and being appointed to the police chief position rather than running as an elected and having to hold true to my political values while being a police chief. Does that make sense?
It does. And, I can't help but ask this question. Well, two questions, really.
Sure.
would you consider Seal Beach to be conservative or liberal? That's my first question. And my second question is, you said you were raised conservative. I want to know what that means. I want to know what that means to you, what that consists of. Being raised conservatively, what does that consist of? So let's start with the first question. Is the population of Seal Beach more conservative or liberal to you?
Funny you ask that. Let me give you a data response, right? And I say that because I don't know the numbers of it or specifically, but I can tell you we're all over the spectrum of voters. Let me see here.
What's your sense, Chief?
My sense is that it's literally,
what the data says.
My sense is that it's literally 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And that's just me off the top of my head, because I've had conversations with our community. I've had conversations with our city council, and I've had all spectrum. And so let me get to just real quick. Like I just typed in Seal Beach makeup of changing electorate, right? And this is from the Sun News. Jeanette Andrus is phenomenal writer who wrote in November 2nd, 2018, a look at the Seal Beach community's changing electorate. And I'll tell you, if you guys want data-driven information, she's a phenomenal reporter, Jeanette Andrus in Seal Beach. But she wrote, in Orange County, there's been a surge of people ditching the mainstream Democratic and Republican political parties, registering as no party preference. Since 2004, there's been a 40% increase in the number of NPPs. The NPP block accounts now for 27% of registered voters countywide, compares to 35% registered as Republicans and 34% as registered Democrats. In Seal Beach, currently has 17,462 voters. Now, granted, this might have changed since 2018. 2019, nearly 22% are registered NPP, so no party preference, compares to 41% who are registered Republicans and 34% registered Democrat. So it's all over the board. 41 conservative, 34 Democrat, and 22 no party preference.
So it's predominantly Republican.
Yes, by 41%.
Okay, so my second question to you was, you said you were raised to be conservative.
Yes.
What does that mean to you? Looking back, what did that consist of?
So in looking back, what my dad had instilled in me, right, was, in short, financially, less government is better. Personally, less government is better. And capitalism is most important, right? Those values in and of itself, and a couple other ones that I remember that were really important were the right to bear arms was so important. And I guess that's another important topic we could talk about someday, maybe even today, is nobody's going to touch my guns. And this belief that all of the verbiage in the United States Constitution should be taken for those words. And so that's been even a challenge as, things move out throughout the Supreme Court, decisions are made. For me, being raised conservatively, to look at things and go, no, that's not what I believe in personally. That's, this is wrong, or this is right, or whatever. And so I started to sway more towards this middle ground of no party preference or independent, because it's easier for me to live my life that way, to support those who are gay, or support those who feel like there needs to be change in gun law, or support those who don't like taxes taken from them, or support those who have outspoken views or want to demonstrate or protest. It's been a challenge to be starting where I was telling you from a conservative standpoint, not like, far right ideology, but just from those basic elements of less government is more, and capitalism, to, okay, well, maybe personally for me, those ideals aren't maybe in line with my personal preferences. That's been this, I call it an evolution of political beliefs in my mind. And I'm to the point where, hey, what I feel or what I believe personally is maybe going to affect or afflict my children, right? And if I could just keep teaching my other two beautiful daughters at home, who I still have 17 and 15, influence over, I think that that's more important than what I have to give as a police chief, whether I'm on the left or right political spectrum, because I just don't think I have a party preference anymore. It doesn't make sense for me to. So,
well, it's important to me to ask what that definition was to you, and sure. I didn't hear you say anything about really people, how conservatives view people, and how quote unquote liberals, progressives, whatever the term is these days, how they view people, because you're in a position of great influence and authority. And yeah. Conservatism to someone like myself, when it comes to people, that's not necessarily going to work out in my favor as a male with this skin that I'm in. And to know what your upbringing was and what your thought process has become when it relates to people, because you are a public servant.
Yeah.
What was the role of conservatism that shaped how you view people in general? Did your father teach you anything about that, or was that something that you had to learn on your own? Because personally speaking, there were things that I was taught, and most of the things I had to learn on my own and realize, well, some of the things I was taught were just flat out false.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with this, right? Are you trying to ask me the simple way of Sean and Phil talking here? Did I ever get taught to be racist or have the theology?
No.
Okay.
Listen, let me tell you something about me. I will ask you straight up.
Okay, good.
If your pop was a racist, and did he teach you to be racist?
Because the good news is, I got good news. My dad was not a racist at all. So the good news is, I was a Jewish kid in South Phoenix. You know, we were not wealthy. We were extremely poor. So I grew up with a large amount of diversity, my childhood years and upbringing. But I think it's interesting you just said something that was really important, is you didn't hear me say anything about people, because I never really, as a child, looked at politics, or even growing up into my young adulthood years, thought of politics as being about people. But the older I get, it's clearly what it is, right? And I don't know what the right answer is about whether do conservatives feel more important beliefs about people, or is it about self-belief? And then do those on the left or even in the middle feel more empathy for people? I couldn't be able to gauge that. What I can tell you is, I never really started thinking about the big picture of politics until my probably early 30s. And political beliefs about how those votes or those changes in policy, law, rule, you name it, affect people beyond me, right? And maybe that's a lesson in life for all of us, is where do we draw the line between personal politics and people politics, right? Because each decision that's made on the legislative level affects a lot of different people. And so it's tough for us as individuals to say, okay, this affects me how, right? Me. In the long run, this affects you how, right? Because things that affect me as a law enforcement officer aren't going to affect Sean Sheppard, who's CEO of a 501c3, right? And let me give you an example of that. The decisions that are being made right now about everything from how we use force, right, for the bad guys, or the decisions that are being made on funding or the lack of funding or removing funding for police departments may not necessarily affect you, Sean, but what they do is they affect the citizens of Seal Beach if that funding is taken away from a police department standpoint and put somewhere else. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. In fact, I just had a conversation with another employee of mine about that, but those decisions don't really even come from me. They come from what I would like to see or know specifically, which I do, is that our city council is speaking on behalf of the citizenry. And I'll tell you, in Seal Beach, we're fortunate that our council does a very good job of supporting the police department. The citizens in the city of Seal Beach support their police department, and they trust us. And I think that that is where, if there's a breakdown between politics, public service, government, and the citizenry, it's that trust factor. And so the example I'm giving you now is I try to make decisions from a law enforcement element in public safety that has nothing to do with politics and only to do with the people that live in the city. Now, in my off time, I try to live a life, of good ethics, good morale, lead a good example for my children. But there is, of course, that moment of, to take care of my family, I have to be a bit selfish, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But in the same token, the second I put on this police uniform and come to work, it's a different story. My wife calls it businessville, because the reality is I don't get paid to give my opinion. I get paid to run a police department and protect those that are live under the roofs in the city of Seal Beach. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. And so that's to get a long story short from you is it's a great question. Is your personal convictions or beliefs in politics have other people in mind? And I would challenge everybody to think of that, including our electeds.
Absolutely, because it really does make a world of difference how you view people, particularly in your line of work. Because what you told me about conservatism when it comes to money and a right to bear arms, I can agree or disagree with that, separate from what you look like or who your mom was or what state that's general stuff. Should I be able to own a gun? Yes or no? But if you're taught specific things about people, like you said, you grew up low income. What if you didn't? Then what was your father's view of people who are low income, regardless of what their skin color is or their gender identity? That's what I'm talking about, because everybody who takes an oath to become a member of law enforcement, they were taught something and had experiences before that moment. Absolutely. And what your view of people is and how you treat people based on what you were told, not necessarily based on your experience. Because a lot of officers get experience with different people for the first time once they become a member of law enforcement. And then they form their opinions of people based on that experience moving forward. So that's why I asked you that question, because Seal Beach may be a community, but it's not a gated community. People come in and out of Seal Beach all the time. And they may have different views from the people who live there. They may have the same views. How those two groups of people interact across all of Orange County and Los Angeles County, it makes a difference how you view people than how you treat those people.
Oh, certainly. And a good example of that is so in Seal Beach, we have Long Beach to the north. And I think that there was I think everybody knows this. We had riots and peaceful demonstrations. We had very loud and obstructive demonstrations in the city of Long Beach. That's where I live. To the north of us, then we have Seal Beach, is kind of like this right on the border of LA County, but the last orange county to the northwest. And then directly south of us is Huntington Beach. And as you all know, those were some of the most tense situations during the entire pandemic. And as it related to the election, everything from, you name it, QAnon versus BLM, literally in the middle of Pacific Coast Highway, that our officers are having to deal with, and at any point in time could have, flared off and gotten worse. We were thankful in that, for the most part, there were some challenges and some dust ups, but for the most part, everybody was kept pretty safe from a law enforcement standpoint. But as you saw, Sean, and as we discussed, it's been a challenge, man. It's been a challenge to be right in the smack middle of it all here for the city of Seal Beach. We had our own demonstration and protest that turned violent, with quite a few arrests out of it, that we're still dealing with in the criminal justice system. But for the most part, I'm blessed. I have two partners that, both Robert Luna to the north is a chief in Long Beach, phenomenal resource, been a cop for 3.5 decades, actually getting ready to retire. And then another chief to the south of me, he's retired now, Chief Rob Handy, and their current interim chief, Julian Harvey, have done a really good job of kind of walking us through it, and how they, and having us be part of their demonstrations, teams, or their response teams, so that my guys and gals can get experience in dealing with those situations. So it's been a wild ride, to say the least, but I'll tell you, it's been a really good learning experience for us in this city, kind of sandwiched in between those two differing personalities as it relates to the community specifically. So been fun.
Yeah, fun in air quotes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So let me get back to a bit of law enforcement, the nuts and bolts of law enforcement. I know that before you became chief, you were a SWAT commander, right?
Yeah.
I'm old enough where I remember the show SWAT, right?
Yeah.
The intro music to that, like, I didn't understand what was going on. I just thought that SWAT was a cool show. Most people really don't know what SWAT does, other than come in, you're dressed in black. You could be rappelling into some situation, and it just looks like high end police work that is completely separate from the patrol officers that we see in and around the community. What is the role of SWAT, and how come there seems to be so few SWAT officers?
So if you were to look at, what's the best way I can explain? What does
SWAT stand for?
Specialized weapons and tactics. But for a lot of these, the officers that don't like SWAT, most of them are jealous. It stands for sit, wait, and talk, but that's for another story. But
yeah,
if you were to say, what is the mission of SWAT, right, is we have provided a profound amount of equipment and training and time in every police officer, from the second they go to a police academy to the second they hit field training, which is anywhere from another 12 to 18 months, till the second they become a solo competent police officer. And that time frame in and of itself is about 2 years, because a lot of people say, oh, you only get 5-6 months in training as a police academy. No, the police academy is almost like the academics of becoming a police officer, and then your training is another 12 to 18 months with another police officer on how to do what you learned in the academy, but physically speaking onto the streets. So that difference between a 2-year police officer being solo and competent driving, that means, by the way, driving a police car all by yourself, handling calls for service, and then the next level of tactics and training is such a vast difference, right? And so what we try to do with SWAT is give more training as it relates to situations that are what we would call low frequency or high risk, right? And high risk meaning that there's a cost of life or death in the immediate decision-making process, and low frequency meaning they don't happen very often. So to get on the SWAT team, you're getting another level of training that takes several years to learn. And so what is the mission of a SWAT team, I will tell you, is always the same as it is with law enforcement, is to protect the communities that we serve, but deal with those situations that line level police officers just aren't used to. And that can be everything from a barricaded situation to, a mass casualty incident involving a number of different assailants and shootings and or other kind of specialized weapons that normal police officers don't see. So, I mean, we could go on for an hour and explain all the differences, but that's the short gist of it all, is that you're calling in those that have had the amount of time and training and expertise to deal with a situation that, let's say, a normal line level police officer has never dealt with before.
Great answer, because I needed that answer, because I didn't know what SWAT did.
Gotcha.
And I'm sure there are some viewers that when they hear the word SWAT, they just kind of go with it, but don't really know what it means.
Yeah.
So I don't want to leave this interview with folks walking away thinking that, man, he's the chief of police and he never graduated from college. I want to give you an opportunity to share how your academic life took a turn and what you have been able to accomplish academically, because I know you just brought up Long Beach. I know you have a certain affection for Long Beach. Go ahead and get into that a little bit.
Yeah, I got to give my Long Beach peeps some shouts. So I'll tell you, when my daughters, I'll tell you, my baby, my youngest baby, Miley, and I'll give her a shout out because she's the baby and she needs all the attention she can get. When she was born, it was 2006. I had another daughter named Madeline. She was 2 at the time that our baby was born. And so then I started this career here in Seal Beach, and the city was offering phenomenal tuition reimbursement. And so I was about 7 or 8 years into my career, and I thought, okay, what are the next steps? And so in the city of Long Beach, obviously, is Cal State University Long Beach, Go Beach, which is like the big university in Long Beach area. And so the city of Seal Beach was willing to pay tuition and fees up to 2 semesters a year. And so it was like to the point where I'm thinking to myself, okay, my wife's got this. She was staying at home at the time. We could afford it, thankfully, by that time. And so she was taking care of our 2 girls. And then my oldest daughter was living with her mom at the time. She eventually came to live with us, but that's another story for another day. And so the city was paying for tuition, and I thought, I need to start setting the example for my children. And so in 2008, I went back to school and brick and mortar school at Cal State Long Beach 3-4 nights a week, and knocked out my bachelor's in business, and then kept going another 1.5 years after that, straight to get my master's in public administration. And then about 7 years later, in 2018, a position came open as an adjunct faculty member at Cal State Long Beach in the Graduate Center for Public Policy and Administration. So I put in for that. My boss gave me a great letter of recommendation, and I was selected to start teaching public policy over there. So it's been a wild ride of education that I would have never seen myself taken advantage of had it not been for the great city's benefit here in the city of Seal Beach at the time. And I look back now and I'm so thankful for that, because that's what's brought me even more diverse than I started being as a police officer. And I can't tell you how much education is important and a big part of that, who I became, not just as a person, but as a police officer. So big proponent of education.
So you spent a considerable amount of time in Orange County since coming over from Arizona. Last time we got together, you said to me that you're known as the most progressive chief in Orange County. What do you think that means to those that call you that? I don't know what they is or who they are, but I'll tell you that there's definitely some decisions that the city of Seal Beach Police Department has made where everybody's kind of taken an eye to it. Let me give you a perfect example. We decided to. I was approached by one of my officers to see if she could make a gay pride police badge. And just as just being a person here, we've done a number of different patches, from Pink Patch, which another organization was started as a result of it, which is the Law Enforcement Cancer Support Foundation by one of our retired commanders, Steve Bowles, brought on years ago. And it was like the whole Pink Patch project movement that was started here in Seal Beach by him, and that 501c3. And then we had another couple different ones. One of them, another corporal of mine brought autism awareness patches, where our patches are made of puzzle pieces, and he raised money for autism in one of those schools that we have in the city of Seal Beach. And then another gentleman I forget what the military 501c3 it was for right now, because it's blank in my head, but he did a camouflage patch for Veterans Day. And so we've raised money for all these different ventures. And then one of my female officers came to us this last, I think it was
was it Gay Pride Month? I forget which one it was now. It's all a blur. I think it was August maybe, or July. I forget which month it was. But she had come to me and she said, "Hey, I'd really like to do a Gay Pride patch." And seeing that I think Sheriff Villanueva in Los Angeles County had done one, I think it was last year, I said, why not? I mean, of course, you know, this makes her feel better and it's for a good cause. And we started selling the patches for the Trevor Project, which, you know, is, as you know, a great 501c3. And so that decision of itself, I mean, I caught a bunch of flack for just approving it, but I'll tell you,
why would you catch flack for that? Before you answer that question, these patches that are created, by no means is it mandatory for your officers to wear these patches on their uniform, correct?
Not at all.
So what's the patch? What's the purpose of the patch? You create a patch, and where does the patch go?
So the patches, you know, we did a press release, which was, hey, we're raising funds for the Trevor Project, which I think an NFL player just did the same thing. He was trying to raise funds for the Trevor Project and came out as gay. And I don't see that as being a political decision. And so I made that decision. And the reason I caught flack was because people, I guess, saw it as being political. And I don't know, I guess personal choice to me isn't a political one, but we went ahead with it. And so now, you know, from what I hear, another number of different agencies are going to come out with the same thing next year. And it's been a blessing. This officer has cried tears in my office to tell me how thankful she is for making that decision and standing up against all that kind of hate that she's experienced throughout her entire life. And, you know, I hold it proudly that we are proud of all of our employees and represent them entirely. And it was challenging. I don't know why, to be honest with you, Sean, but I got hate mail. I got hate voicemails. Some other day I'll play them all for you. And I thought to myself, okay, you just got to keep doing our job, which is public service and raise funds for those that are in need, regardless of their race, color, religion, sexual preference, you name it. My job doesn't differ from that. I'll protect anybody and everybody if they ask for it or need it. And so hopefully it becomes normal someday that this job is not political and we're doing what's best for the community, regardless of what you believe in.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, Patch. I'm glad you brought it up, because you see what I mean by when you talk about conservative or liberal, and that's viewed as politics.
Certainly.
How you feel about people, to me, has nothing to do with politics. That's about your character.
Yeah.
Right? That's how I feel about it. So these people who called you up and left you hateful voicemail messages about you approving the creation of an LGBTQ patch, that doesn't have anything to do with politics. That has to do with what's in your soul. That's what that has to do with. And so in your officer's soul was a desire to support this particular group of people, and you approving that. So I'm gonna put you on the hot seat and ask, when's your black officer going to come up to you and ask if you can create a patch to support the black community and for the Seal Beach Police Department to show their support for the black community? Now, I don't even know if you have any black police officers in Seal Beach. I've never asked you that question.
No.
But I'm going to tell you that it's important that all demographics of society are represented in your police department, because you have people living in your community that has nothing to do with politics, that have certain views of people. And until they see all kinds of people serving them, and at times saving their lives and saving the day, until they see that, it does play a role in perpetuating their stereotypes of what they've seen on television about certain people. And I bring that up because several years ago, San Diego hired its first Muslim police officer. And it was a big deal. It was a big deal to the Muslim community. And they were disappointed that the first black Muslim in the San Diego Police Department was not assigned to their neighborhood. And I said to them, I said, have you ever thought how important it is for that Black Muslim police officer to be serving an all-white community, an all-white Christian community, yep, so that he or she can serve their community and dispel myths and help them and save the day and change their perception of what a Black Muslim person is? They had never thought of that. Yeah. They had never thought of that. And so I bring that up because I wanted to let you know that if no one had ever thought of that, it is important, whether the residents know it or not, it needs to be something conscious. And all the millions of other things you got to think of as police chief, but you wanted to be chief. So
I've told you 1,000 times that there's not a question I'm afraid to answer. I'll tell you that I have yet to see a patch that represents some Black Heritage Month or whatever, but I'll tell you, I would be open to it 100%. You know that, Sean. So let's knock that out of the way. Number two, I don't have a Black police officer. And to answer the question why, I don't know. They just never have. A Black person has never risen to the top of the selection process. Would I like a Black police officer? Absolutely. Would I knock out a white police officer because they're Black? No. I would knock out a white police officer because they were Black and they beat the white police officer in the testing process. Of course. So, you know, we talked about, you know, how do I spread the diversity challenge in my organization to get more Black police officers? I'm all ears, because we go out and we try to recruit. We're huge on Instagram trying to recruit Black police officers. In fact, if you're Black and you're watching this, I encourage and invite you to test with us. But just because we don't have a Black police officer doesn't mean we're not diverse. I mean, I'm Jewish. I'm a Jewish police chief. I have Asian police officers. I have a number of Hispanic police officers. I have female police officers. I have gay police officers. So it's not for a lack of trying to be diverse. I think it's just been difficult for us to get a Black police officer. So if you got anybody, send them my way, Sean. But you know, the other thing is that's challenging right now for us in this profession is not the recruitment part of it, but recruiting people that can pass the background process, right? And so we're finding everything from now kids, or I shouldn't say kids, these are grown adults now, that marijuana is legal. Okay. Yeah. So marijuana in California is legal, but federally it's illegal. Right. And I have to protect the Constitution of the United States of America, but you smoked weed yesterday, which is legal in California, but federally illegal. I can't hire you. I can't hire. So that in and of itself is a contradiction to my profession, because our job is to protect the Constitution. So because you smoke weed, I can't hire you. So we have to have like this cooling off period. And now you have everything from, and I'm just using substance because that's huge right now in our communities. I mean, you've seen the opioid crisis and all that other kind of jazz. But substance abuse as it relates to pills, alcohol, marijuana, opioids, psychedelics, you name it, it's so profound and so part of our common culture now that we're not even arresting people for drug violations. We're giving them citations, and they're not even getting into the criminal justice system. And I'm not saying that every person that's on drugs deserves to go to jail. What I'm saying is there's got to be a better way. And so I think that the conversations you and I are finally starting to have together about moving this needle in the rehabilitation phases of the criminal justice system and then mental health, all working together to fix the broken system that we're handed with in this profession as it relates to law enforcement is going to take some time. But, you know, I was speaking in a class the other day about moving that needle. And I know it's such a cliche, moving the needle, blah, 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 blah. But really is, what are we going to do in the time we have left to do it in, right? Granted, I can retire in 4 years and walk away with a very happy retirement. Am I going to? No, because there's too much more work to be done. right? There's too much more work to do. You were talking the last time we met about a friend of yours who was really moving the needle and just, I'm done, right? Because we get tired. We get tired of dealing with the same block walls that we run into, especially at the police chief's level, because you're like, I'm gonna be a police chief because I'm gonna make a difference in the organization and make a difference in the city that I work for, and personally develop or become someone. But we get tired because we run into these brick walls, and no matter how many times we pound the wall, things change, laws change, people's change, politics change, right? And they drive these discussions to become something that they weren't ever meant to be in the end. But as you know, my passion for this job doesn't lie in the today. It lies in where it's going to be for my children and my children's children. Because, you know, like we've talked about a number of times before, is we're not doing this work now to solve racism now. We're trying, but it's not going to be solved now. To solve racism or to protect our children from having to experience racism is going to take decades, maybe even a century. But to start now and move the needle now with some of the things in the articles that you've read of mine, we have to have a change in venue. We have to have a change in beliefs. We have to have a change in procedures. And they're incremental. They're baby steps. And we're going to get it wrong, right? We're going to get it wrong. I think that's important also, Sean, is that we're not, just because a law enforcement entity or police department changes its policy because we think it's right, doesn't mean it's going to work. So we have to completely be, we have to annually, at least annually, looking at these policies and procedures and thinking to ourselves, hey, are these matching together with what the community desires of us for the cities we work for? But also, as a nation, are all of us police departments on the same mission? My problems in Seal Beach aren't the same problems in Long Beach. My problems in Long Beach as a citizen definitely aren't the same problems as a citizen of Seal Beach. And so I think incremental challenges, once we get back to the locality of our problems and our communities that we serve, will come together with making some of these incremental changes that will someday hopefully have a big, profound impact on life. And politics aside from it all, like you said, let's talk about being a person and being a good human. And that, I think, is an immense amount of work that we have ahead of ourselves, and we can't do it alone. We need people like Sean Sheppard in these 501c3s or these game changer events or these conversations that are difficult and challenging for us as cops to answer. We need our community. We need our electeds. We need our religious folks. We need everybody to step up and say, you know what, enough. Let's focus on being a good person. Let's focus on the communities that we are living in, make the communities better so that we can work with other communities to make other communities better. And then that small little step will help our state and then hopefully our nation become better in time. But it's a grind. So to go back on your last question about why I think I'm probably one of the more progressive chiefs in the county is because I do believe, just like the rest of the chiefs in this county, that there is stuff we need to change, and we're moving at small steps at a time, but not because we're progressive, because I want to be more towards the middle of politics. Progressive in the sense that, Sean, we have to change some things. Some things can remain the same because they have to, like tactics or the reason that we pull out our firearm to shoot at a gun or shoot at a car that's driving towards one of our police officers because he or she may want to be, may want to kill a cop that day. I can't change that. I can't change that behavior. Pulling out a taser and tasing a pickup truck, moving at a police officer to kill that police officer is not effective. It's just not effective. Now, am I going to encourage my police officers to shoot at a moving vehicle? No. But if they have to, right? I mean, I'm still challenged today with social media and the ability for people to have opinions without having all the facts. And so that, I think, is us as police chiefs and police officers and community members need to take a step back, take a breath, get all the information, and then make an opinion that is valid, because everybody's opinion is valid. So anyway, I'm going off, brother.
No, listen, great way for us to wrap up our conversation, Chief. Okay. I really appreciate you taking the time out to share who you are as a person and what drives you as a person, because so many people don't look at men and women in uniform as people. And I just wanted to take.
Sorry about the uniform, man. I got meetings back to back, so I told you it was going to have to be in uniform.
That's all right, man. You know, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. I just do that because I want people to see you. I told you, I want people to see Phil, not Chief Gonshak. And you gave our viewers an opportunity to see who Phil is with your words. And I want to thank you for taking the time to do that.
My pleasure, man. It's always a good time to talk. So let's do it again.